Um, I must begin by greeting all of you all and the delegates in the dais, Dr. Shivadasan who invited me here. All of you are members of the Library Congress and are here for this third Congress. It's of course for me an honor to be invited to participate and read along with you, all of you, the preamble to the Indian Constitution, which of course we now find the need to protect even more. Well, I suppose you all know about libraries far more than I do. Of course, I belong to that tribe which actually grew up in libraries because we didn't have computers and digital means of communication and access. I think it's important, particularly today, and I'll just briefly try and refer to that. It's important today that we not only have all of those who are interested in fostering and perpetuating and strengthening libraries across the country, whether they be people who run these libraries, who utilize these libraries, finance these libraries, and all of them come together to have a movement, and I think it's important for a number of reasons. But, we know that basically, what do we have here? We basically have a set of, locations, spaces, which are the repositories of socially created knowledge over history. So it's, in some sense, they are repositories of historical memory and knowledge. And in the process of the creation of that knowledge, and of course in purveying that knowledge, it gets influenced in different ways at different points of time by the social formations, the divisions which exist in society, and so on. But yet there is a difference today. Because the understanding, if you look at the libraries, even though, as was pointed out, perhaps there's been an acceleration in the growth of libraries in more recent times. By recent times, I mean the last 2-3 decades. But we know that they've been there and been an important part because of the fact that they not merely provided access, therefore in some sense guaranteed the right to access and the right to know to this repository of socially constructed knowledge over history, but they also were spaces in which you had access to all points of view. That you really, the idea of a library should be that it doesn't actually say that we would in some sense try to intervene and determine what kind of knowledge gets pervaded through these institutions, or through these structures, brick and mortar structures as you mentioned, but really to populate them in one way or another to the extent that finances at any point in time in history provides, to populate them with the material which reflects all points of view, such that there is exposure which the citizenry have because of the fact that you want a citizenry which not merely is literate, which is not merely is educated, and in that the library plays a role, but is also critically engaged. You want to be critically engaged, as you mentioned, that you need to have the understanding of the other, even if you are partisan, as all of us are, you tend to be. You need to have an understanding of the other, and there must be an opportunity which is provided as part of ensuring the right to access and the right to know to this multiplicity of ways of looking at of society, which of course is influenced, as we know, by the structure, the hierarchies characteristic of these social formations. Now, creating, as I said, this literate, this educated, and this engaged, critically engaged citizenry, of course, becomes a problem, and in particular points in history to a greater degree than otherwise, even if there are more opportunities, and that's the way I look at it today. Why is it more of a challenge? It's more of a challenge because of the fact that there is, at some point of time, if you say that what constrains the ability to provide this access, this ability to be able to facilitate and advocate the right to know through the library, or not just a library movement, but through libraries per se, then what you're basically saying is that the constraint at that point of time might have been, principally, despite the fact that at all points of time in history it's socially structured, it might in substantial measure be financial and economic, because of the fact that there's a limit to which, particularly in less developed countries and low and middle income countries, you're in a position to be able to move libraries virtually to where they need to be, to decentralize the whole structure, the infrastructure of libraries, because you are essentially saying that this is one element, and this is one element of the infrastructure of a democratic society, that you need to have these libraries all over and decentralized and not just concentrated, let's say, in the capital city or the state capitals and so on. So you could say that even if there wasn't too much of a push to try and influence what is purveyed through libraries, there could have been a constraint. There's a constraint which could come essentially because of the fact that there's a limit to which you can set up these brick and mortar structures and populate them with physical books, because at that point of time, because while this is a record of historical memory, the record of course relates to the period from which we have access to printed media. But if you want to do that, it obviously costs some money. And you could have said that despite the intentions, the good intentions or reasonably good intentions of those who are responsible for actually creating and sort of spreading libraries, that this could not go far enough, maybe at different points of time. People have been critical that it hasn't gone far enough because of an inadequate allocation to what is actually an important task of creating, as I said, one of these pillars of what should be a democratic society with a critically engaged citizenry. But we know now that in part this has been this constraint has been relaxed because of the coming of digital technology, because of the multiple ways in which, without having to make the kind of investments you need to make to have physical books in a large physical location in order to be able to provide good enough access to knowledge and facilitate the right to know, that it's possible to do it at much lower cost. But we know that there are two problems precisely when this is happening. The first, of course, which I think is the more important problem, which is that we happen to be in a period when there is an attempt to invert reason itself. That the idea is not that you want people educated, the idea is not that you want to have schools and universities which actually purvey critical knowledge, access to knowledge, not just knowledge on literature and art and history and society and economy, but also on science and technology and so on, as part of building a scientific temper, which is very important from the point of view of ensuring a democratic, progressive society. But the idea now is that you don't want rational thinking, that you can actually be in a situation where you go to some of the fora which are supposed to be sort of bastions of scientific knowledge and present arguments which are an inversion of reason. And when you have a tendency for the inversion of reason, because of the fact that these are funded, this is a funded infrastructure, you can actually have capture. And therefore, the first challenge at this point of time is, I think, that it's not enough to say that if we have libraries, if we decentralize the library infrastructure, we create more libraries, we even put in a little bit more money perhaps, that in itself is going to ensure what the library should do, because of the fact that it can be captured. And what we need to first, why we need a movement, I suppose, why we need to have everybody involved come together, is because of the fact that we should prevent that capture. And we do know that, given the controversies which surrounds the whole system of education, right from school onwards through universities, that this is a real challenge. That the challenge is of actually saying that do we need rationality at all, of inverting reason in some sense. The second, of course, is that while the coming of technology is this great advantage, as I was pointing out, because it allows a kind of scale at a cost which at one point of time could not have been thought about at all, where you could get access to all kinds of knowledge in multiple forms, not just printed word, but sound and image and video and so on. That gives, that is a great benefit. That also reduces costs. That allows decentralization. It allows the spread of these repositories of historical knowledge. But also, you can have a situation. You must realize that technology is not neutral. Technology too could, in some sense, be utilized for purposes which do not merely serve the intent with which libraries were created and are being fostered and strengthened over a period of time, or should be fostered and strengthened over a period of time. And the absence of neutrality also comes sometimes with the nature of this technology, where it could actually militate against the reading habit itself. And it could, because, you now open book, which is a PDF file, and you have an AI assistant telling you that, oh, do you want a summary of this book? You don't even have to read it. And we know that how these summaries are constructed. These summaries are constructed by these spiders going through the web and interpreting in some sense that text in order to offer you a summary. And that actually erodes the need for you to critically engage with that text. So there are challenges. We need to use these technologies because they are there. They have great, they can give us great benefit, but we must also use them realizing that they can be misused, that technology is not neutral. So there are these two challenges. One, the challenge is to the notion of, or to the idea that you need rationality to be at the center of any effort to try and create progressive democratic societies, which breaks down all kinds of barriers, not just the barrier of access to knowledge, but there is also the danger that while we're getting a lot of benefits because of the progress of science and of technology, that in this environment in particular, that technology could be misused, and it could be misused in a way in which whatever it is, that it's not the university or the WhatsApp university or whatever you want to call these things, actually take over the sort of control and the process of pervading this knowledge. So in that context, I think there's no time in which it's more important to have something like a library movement, which comes together nationally in the form of the Library Congress, and therefore deeply honored. It is a privilege to have been invited to come and join me on this occasion. Thank you.